Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Mateyena and I am back with a video on how to pass the NCLEX. The title doesn't say how to pass the NCLEX with 75 questions, but however, this is just tips that I'm going to give you on just how to pass the NCLEX, because you can pass the NCLEX with even more than 75 questions. And plus, English is not my first language, and I managed to pass the NCLEX within 75 questions. So I can share some of the tips and what I did with you guys, and it might help you, because this is not just for somebody who has English as a second language, because there are American borns. There are people that have spoken English their whole life who go to the NCLEX and fail, and there are people that do pass NCLEX, however they don't pass it with 75 questions either. So in general, all the tips I'm giving in this video is just to help anyone out there, whether English is your first language, whether you want to just pass the NCLEX or pass the NCLEX with 75 questions. So let's get to it. I did make a video on how I failed my nursing school exit exam. I'll link it up here if you haven't seen it. And after failing my nursing school exit exam, I was really worried about the NCLEX. I was so worried and I was so nervous. And then I went to take my NCLEX and I passed. So here are the things that I did. Before I could sit to take the NCLEX, I did so many research on the NCLEX test itself. You know, I did like Google researches, I read blogs, I watched YouTube videos and people's experience, and I did that so much just to have like an idea of what the NCLEX is like, because the NCLEX is not the same for everyone, in my opinion, because I've heard so many people say things, and when I took it, I felt differently. And one of the things that I have to say helped me pass the NCLEX with 75 questions is I was fortunate enough that I went to a nursing school that does have a program toward the end of nursing school to prepare you just for the NCLEX exam. So that program lasts about the last 4 months of nursing school. You do your schoolwork and then you work through that program, and then they use ATI, which has a coach that coaches you and figure out your weaknesses, target your weaknesses, and focus on your weaknesses. Before I could start with the ATI program, I myself bought this book, NCLEX RN Examination. I bought this book on Amazon because that was my personal plan to prep for my exam, for my NCLEX exam, and it has so many great reviews, like pages and pages and pages. But however, the way my school does things, everything, my nursing school was computerized, and I was so used to that system. So this was kind of something that I find it hard to go through. I just couldn't open it and go back and reading everything. But what I did think this book would have been good for, I think I should have bought this book at the beginning of nursing school, and for each subject read it and do the question and make sure I understood the material. This is something I really wish someone told me about. Our school gave us this book from ATI. This is basically everything we needed to know during the nursing school to prep for the NCLEX exam. It was just like a quick review book that gave you tips on the basics of things to know, because toward the end of nursing school, you really don't have time to go back and read all the nursing books and everything. So this was just all the nursing material that was crammed into the book. And I have to say, I read this book, entire book, and this book has helped me. It had so many tricks and amazing content that I truly believe it helped me. For prioritization and delegation, it does have like one table in it, and that table I was able to just know the content of that table, and I could prioritize and delegate anything on any given question because it brings everything forth so you know what to do. It's like a guideline to prioritization and delegation. And this was also like a great reminder of some things I have forgotten since I started nursing school like 2+ years ago. By the end of it, some information I completely forgot. My mind just poof. I did this book and I worked with the ATI coach and I took it seriously. I did the really best that I could. And then toward the end, this was given to me by my school. It's a book that's written by a lady named Diane Lane, and apparently she has a 99% pass on the NCLEX, and she gives really great tips on her book. And I feel like I read her entire book, and I feel like this book particularly helped me understand the med surge and the nutrition. In my personal opinion, the first thing in passing the NCLEX is knowledge. I think knowledge is the #1 key to passing the NCLEX. You have to go to nursing school, you have to learn your material, and you have to review it and make sure you know as much as possible. Because in school they will teach you what you need to know to pass the NCLEX. You should not be going to a nursing school that's not teaching you what might be on the NCLEX. So for me, because I had the knowledge, but because English is not my first language, I didn't know how the questions were going to be worded, if it was going to be some fancy words that I wouldn't understand. I had so much fear and anxiety. Therefore, I decided to learn test taking strategy. In my college, they had a lady, she was specialized in test taking strategy, and she was just giving courses. You can go and see her, make an appointment, and learn different test taking strategies. So I did that once with her halfway through nursing school, just to get the basic things. And toward the end of nursing school, I spent so much time with her, to the point where she can teach you how to identify a positive question, a negative question, when you see a time in an answer, like what different things mean, keywords in the question. And sometimes the question can even give away the answers. There's some questions, if you know test taking strategies, there's some questions that do have answers in them already. But there is something that I didn't know. It took like a professional, somebody that has mastered the art of test taking strategy for nursing, to teach me that, and it took several times. So I needed that as something to fall back on, just in case I come across a question where maybe I don't remember, or I see a disease that I've never seen. You know, I wanted to have a way of answering a question whether I've seen it before or not. There's a book on test taking strategy. I couldn't find it here because I don't know where I put it, but I did buy it from Amazon. I'll link it down below just in case your college doesn't offer those courses. I did buy that book, but that's another book I didn't use because I was fortunate to have a live person teach me those testing taking strategy. And we will do ATI questions, and with each question she will we will start with knowledge base, and then after knowledge base, if I can find the answer, we will go through it and use test taking strategy and answer the question. When I went to sit down for the NCLEX exam, before I went down to sit down during my practice, I prepared for 265 questions. And I did so not because I was hoping for 265 questions, but I did so because I didn't want to lose stamina. Just in case my exam does not stop at 75 or 85 or 100, I didn't want to get tired. I didn't want to just start selecting answers just because I'm tired, just to move on. So I did prepare well for 265 questions. I wanted to have stamina. I wanted to be and strong, even if my exam go to 265 questions. When I sat down in front of my computer, I was just so nervous, and I started taking the question, and literally the second question was a select all that apply. So for me on the NCLEX side, I tackled the select all that apply, which was like one of my biggest worry, because you get one, you select one extra answer, or you forget, or you don't know and you don't select one answer, the whole question is correct. So how I went about it, I read the question carefully and I went to select my answers, and I used a true or false for each answer. If I read it once and it made sense, I select it and I select it. But if I read it and part of it makes sense, part of it do not make sense, I do not select it. If I read it and it's something that I spent 2+ years in nursing school, I've never seen, I've never heard in nursing school, I do not select those. Some of the questions I read them and I knew and I selected, and some of them I read them and it was just, what is that? And I did not select it and I moved on. And I ended up having 25 select all total, because I had a notepad just for the MedCalc, which I counted them because I was curious. I wanted to know how many select all I would end up with. So I ended up with 25 select alls. I did not have MedCalc at all. I did come across one question and I had the same question 3 times, and personally I felt like I wasn't answering the question properly. The question kept coming back in a different format. I knew it was the same question, it was asking almost the same type of thing, but it was in a different format, and I was getting that particular question wrong because I didn't know if the question was asking if it's a procedure between, during, or after, because it was a select all, and it was just formulated. And I understand English is not my first language, but that particular question, I felt like even an American born would be confused of how the question was formulated. So after the 3rd time, when the question came back for the 3rd time, I read it and I finally answered it and I selected the question, and I've never seen that question again. It went poof, it disappeared. Some of the questions were questions that I've heard. I remember hearing my instructors say in class during teaching, they have mentioned it, so I was able to see it. And when I read a question, some of the question I read and I knew the answer. Some of the question I read it and I have to kind of prioritize and look and use the nursing process and select the answer. And some of them I read the question and I look at the answer, and as I already mentioned, I spent 2+ years in nursing school. If I see something that I never heard during those 2+ years in nursing school, I'm not selecting it, because if I have never heard of such and such being an answer in nursing school, why am I selecting it? And I did not select it. And one of the things I discovered by reading this Diane Lane book, I read it 1 week before. I completely read it 1 week before taking the NCLEX, and there was a new rule to the select all that I apply. During nursing school, I learned that select all that apply can either be select all or only 2. But in this book, it did say that select all that apply now can just only be 1 answer correct. So I did come to this select all that apply question, and I'm reading all the different choices, and I only found 1 that was correct. And I kept on like thinking to myself, well, I'm trying to select 2, and I spent so much time looking for like a second right answer and I cannot find it. And I took a deep breath and I actually remember that I read somewhere that it could only be 1, and I selected and I moved on. And when I came to I did see some diseases or some question about some procedure I've never heard of in nursing school. I never seen during clinical. When I got to those questions, I used test taking strategy and I selected my answer and I moved on. And some of them, even though I didn't understand, by the time I used test taking strategy to select my answer, it actually started making sense. And then I was selected and then I moved on. Basically, I went with what I knew. I went with evidence-based practice. I went with everything I learned during my reviews. I went with my own inner guts, like my gut. You know, sometimes you see a nursing question and you feel like something is telling me it's this. Something. Like during nursing school, I was practicing to listen to my intuition and I couldn't, but by the time I arrived to the NCLEX, there's some question that I read and I look at the answers and I'm like, something is telling me it's this. I don't know what it is, but just something is telling me, and I listen to that something and I select that answer. When I come across like an English word that I didn't know, I read it and I put my finger on that word and I read it again and I see if does it make sense without the word. Is the word just, you know, something to distract me? And if I cover my finger and then the sentence doesn't make any sense, I take my finger off, I read as much as I can, I use test taking strategy, and then I select my answer and then I move on. So what else? During the exam, when I arrive at 60 something questions, I'm a very slow test taker, so my computer stopped and told me I could take a break. So I did take that break. I took a bathroom break and I came back and I continued on to my exam. During the exam, I did everything I could as much as possible. That day, I made sure I brought in all my energy, all my strength for like different side. You know, whether it was spiritual, knowledge. I had anxiety, but I still had to be stronger and not let my anxiety be the best of me. I was able to focus, and sometimes anxiety gives you better focus, so mild anxiety is okay. And I took my test. I arrived at the 75 question. I was not expecting my computer to shut down. When I answered question 75, I expected to go to question 76 and my computer shut down. It froze and I was so lost. I didn't know what to do. I literally felt like, you know when you're taking a written test and the teacher is pulling the paper away from you? So when the computer shut down, I felt like my test paper was pulled away from me and I wanted to say, wait, come, I need to finish the exam. I mean, I was excited and confused at the same time because although I prepare as much as I could, I still have a little bit of low self-esteem. And I thought that maybe I'm going to be the first person in my class that have taken the exam and failed at 75 questions. I went home, I was nervous, I was worried. The next day I didn't want to check. I had to have like, you know, I didn't want to check. I had somebody text me to ask me, did you pass? Did you pass? I told her no, I don't know if I passed because I haven't checked. And she kept on saying check, and I didn't want to check because I was just too nervous and anxious. Like I didn't, because of how I felt after failing my exit exam, I was afraid that that feeling was gonna come back again. I was afraid I was gonna feel that way all over again, so I didn't want to check. So she did go ahead and check. I guess you can check if somebody have a license. So she checked and she texted me and she said, you passed your NCLEX, you have a license number. So after she sent me that text, I was like, what? Somebody can check my license number? And I went and checked for myself and that's when I realized I had passed my NCLEX with 75 questions. This was very surreal for me because during nursing school I struggled with answering questions with English not being my first language. I can't tell you how many questions I got wrong in nursing school just because I didn't understand an English word or the sentence didn't make sense. So I didn't want to go and make those mistakes on my NCLEX and then fail. If you have any other questions for me regarding the NCLEX, then I'm sure maybe I forgot some things in this video because there's so much going into this passing the NCLEX. You can leave all your questions down below and I can answer them directly, and I'll put the video on how I failed my nursing school exit exam. You can check it out, and I'll see you in the next video.